You are not depressed because your life is hard. You are suffering because you have a brain that generates approximately 60,000 thoughts per day, and somewhere along the way, you made the catastrophic mistake of believing that every single one of those thoughts is true, important, and worth acting on. You started treating the weather report inside your skull like it was scripture, like the anxious voice at 2 a.m. that tells you you're a failure, that voice that you gave it a throne. You handed it the keys and said, "You're right. Tell me more." That's the trap. And Joseph Nguyen wrote a book about it. But here's what this video isn't. This isn't a summary. I'm not going to read you chapter titles and send you on your way feeling mildly motivated for 45 minutes before you go back to spiraling. This is a manual, a specific surgical breakdown of why your mind is running a con on you, how that con has been quietly torching your relationships, your ambitions, your peace, and how you stop it. Not by thinking harder, not by reading more books, by doing something so counterintuitive it almost sounds irresponsible. Let's get into it. There's a story about a man named Descartes. René Descartes, 17th century French philosopher, genius, the guy who gave us, "I think, therefore I am." He locked himself in a room, literally a heated room in Germany, and decided he would doubt everything. Every perception, every assumption, every belief. Strip it all down. Find the one thing he could be absolutely certain of. And what did he land on? Thinking. The act of thinking itself. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. For 300 years, Western civilization built its entire intellectual identity on that foundation. Thinking equals existence. Thinking equals truth. The more you think, the closer you get to reality. Rationality became the God. Logic became the church. And it ruined us. Because here's what Descartes didn't account for. The content of your thoughts is not the same as the act of thinking. Meaning, yes, you think, therefore you are. But the things you think, those aren't you. Those aren't automatically true. Those are just weather. Just electrical storms passing through a brain that's been shaped by trauma, by childhood, by a comment your third-grade teacher made that you forgot about consciously but your nervous system cataloged in permanent ink. Joseph Nguyen's whole argument starts here. The source of human suffering isn't circumstances. It's not failure, rejection, poverty, or loss, not directly. It's the thinking about those things. It's the story you construct around them. The meaning you manufacture at 3 a.m. when you should be sleeping, but instead you're replaying a conversation from 4 days ago, editing your responses, rehearsing arguments with people who aren't even in the room. That is the enemy, and you built it. Thought by thought, belief by belief, you constructed a mental architecture that now runs on autopilot and calls itself you. The psychological truth here is almost offensive in its simplicity. You are not your thoughts. The thinker is separate from the thoughts. You are the sky. The thoughts are clouds. They move through. They don't define the sky. They don't damage it. They just pass. Now apply that. Right now. Whatever you're anxious about. The thing sitting at the back of your mind while you watch this, ask yourself, is that thing real, or is that a story about a thing? Because there's a difference. The thing exists in the world. The story exists only in your skull. And you've been treating the story like it's more real than the thing itself. Here's where it gets ugly. When most people discover their suffering, what do? They think about it more. They analyze. They journal. They make pros and cons lists. They call a friend and talk it through for 2 hours. They read self-help books, which is at least somewhat self-aware given where we are right now. And they add more frameworks on top of the pile of frameworks they already have. They try to think their way out of a thinking problem. That's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline and then wondering why the fire is bigger. There was a study conducted on people who identified as chronic worriers, people whose anxiety was debilitating, constant, crippling. Researchers asked them to set aside 30 minutes a day as designated worry time. Write down everything stressing you. Then close the notebook. The result? The people who did this reported dramatically less anxiety throughout the rest of their day. Now here's the interesting part. The worrying didn't stop. The thoughts didn't disappear. What changed was their relationship to those thoughts. They stopped treating every anxious thought as an emergency that required immediate cognitive attention. They said, "Not now. I'll think about that at 4 p.m. And the brain, surprisingly, largely complied. Because the thoughts were never the problem. The engagement with the thoughts was the problem. The moment you grab a thought, especially an anxious, self-critical, catastrophizing thought, and you start wrestling with it, you give it energy. You make it real. You feed it. Nguyen's framework here is borrowed loosely from a lineage of thinkers Sydney Banks, George Pransky, the Three Principles movement, and the core insight is this: thought is a function, not a fact. Your brain produces thoughts the same way your heart produces beats. Continuously, automatically, without your conscious input. You don't decide what thought arrives next. You just notice it arriving. The trap is believing you're obligated to respond to every single one. You're not. The anxious thought about your career? You don't have to solve it tonight. The spiral about whether you're a good partner, a good parent, a good person? You don't have to resolve that right now. You can notice the thought. Feel where it lands in your body. Watch it. And then, this is the move, let it pass without feeding it. Not suppression. Not toxic positivity. Not just think happy thoughts. Observation. Distance. A kind of amused detachment where you go, oh, there's that thought again. Wild. Anyway, stop me if this sounds familiar. You feel anxious, so you try to figure out why you're anxious, which makes you more anxious, so you try harder to figure out why. Now you're anxious about being anxious. You're analyzing the analysis. Meta-suffering. A spiral inside a spiral inside a spiral. And the whole thing started because you felt a slightly uncomfortable feeling and immediately treated it like a bomb that needed defusing. Why do you do that? Seriously, why are you still pretending that every uncomfortable feeling is a malfunction that needs to be fixed rather than a signal that needs to be heard? Here's Nguyen's second big gut punch. Feelings are not the problem. They're the compass. Negative emotions, anxiety, dread, shame, that hollow feeling on Sunday evenings. Those aren't signs that something is wrong with you. They're feedback. They're the dashboard of your inner life telling you something needs attention. But here's the difference that changes everything. The feeling is pointing at the thinking, not at the external circumstance. Take a concrete example. Two people get laid off on the same day from the same company in the same economic downturn. One person falls into a 6-month depression, convinced they're unemployable, that their identity has collapsed, that their worth was tied to that job. The other person is sad for a week, then pivots. Same event, wildly different outcomes. What's the variable? The thinking about the event, the story, the meaning assigned. The person who spiraled didn't spiral because they got laid off. They spiraled because they had a pre-existing belief, probably years old, possibly decades, that their value as a human being was contingent on their professional output. The job loss didn't create that belief. It just activated it. The trigger wasn't the problem. The loaded gun was the problem. And that loaded gun, built entirely from thought, from 1,000 tiny moments of thinking, I am what I produce, reinforced over years until it became invisible, became assumed, became reality. So the application is this. When you feel something sharp and uncomfortable, stop asking, why is my life like this? And start asking, what am I believing right now that's making this hurt so much? Because the hurt is real. I'm not dismissing the hurt, but the belief underneath it, that's where the surgery needs to happen. That's the root. Everything else is just symptoms. Here it is. The thing that will make half the people watching this immediately annoyed. The solution, according to Nguyen, and this lineage of psychological thinking he's drawing from, is not to think better thoughts, not to reprogram your beliefs, not to do CBT worksheets or affirmations or vision boards or 5-year plans. The solution is to stop generating unnecessary thought in the first place, to return to what Nguyen calls a state of non-thinking, or more precisely, a state where you're not compulsively, habitually manufacturing suffering through a thought machine that never turns off. But I can't just stop thinking, right? I know, that's not what this is saying. Imagine you're in a swimming pool and the water is turbulent, churned up, choppy, impossible to see through. You can't calm the water by grabbing it, fighting it, trying to manually still every wave with your hands. The only way the water becomes clear is if you stop disturbing it and let it settle on its own. Your mind is the pool. Most people spend their entire lives with their hands in the water, churning it constantly, thinking about the past, rehearsing the future, constructing narratives, replaying wounds, planning defenses against attacks that haven't happened and probably never will. The practice, and yes, it is a practice, is to take your hands out of the water, to stop voluntarily generating the next thought, to sit in what feels at first like unsettling silence and slowly realize that the silence isn't empty. It's full. It's where clarity lives. It's where the good decisions come from. It's where creativity shows up. It's where you actually feel like yourself rather than like a brain on fire. This is why every serious meditation tradition in human history has pointed at roughly the same thing. The problem is not the world, it's the unexamined mind. The Buddha called it the second arrow. Life fires the first arrow, pain arrives, that's unavoidable. But you fire the second arrow yourself into the same wound by thinking about the pain, resisting it, fighting it, adding suffering to suffering. The practice is learning to dodge the second arrow. You can't always control what happens to you. You cannot always control what thought arrives first. But you have enormous power over whether you grab it and start building a story around it, or whether you watch it, feel it, and let it dissolve. Here's the thing nobody tells you about this work. It doesn't feel heroic. There's no moment where you triumph over your mind, swords raised, rocky theme playing. It's quieter than that, almost anticlimactic. You just start noticing. You catch yourself mid-spiral and something in you goes, wait, is this real or is this the story? And sometimes you keep spiraling anyway, and that's fine. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be aware, because awareness is the beginning of everything. Once you can see the thought, you're no longer inside it. Once you're no longer inside it, you have space. And space is where choice lives. Space is where you stop reacting and start responding. Space is the difference between a life that's happening to you and a life you're actually, consciously, deliberately building. Joseph Nguyen isn't selling peace. He's not promising you'll never suffer again or feel anxious or spiral at 2 a.m. He's saying something harder and more honest than that. The suffering you experience is mostly self-generated, and once you really, truly absorb that, not intellectually but in your bones, everything starts to change. Not because you got better circumstances, because you stopped letting your own mind be your worst enemy. You've been doing that long enough. It's time to stop.